Okay, the time is 1:35, so we're going to go ahead and start this session. Welcome to the Colorado Libraries for Early Literacy 2024 Annual Conference. You are at Full Steam Ahead, a brainstorming session for STEAM programming geared towards ages 0 to 5 with Kirsten Caldwell. Our session ends at 2:25 and will be followed by a 25-minute break, so hope everyone took a little time to move around and is ready to go for this next session. If you run into any issues with the live stream, try refreshing your browser or the app. You can always send messages to the chat as well, and Elle and I will try to help. And you'll notice that the chat is disabled among participants, but feel free to add questions and anything into the chat, and we'll share that with Kirsten at the end. She's going to talk for a little bit, and then we'll open it up and allow participants to also speak and share ideas as well. So without further ado, Kirsten, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you for all of that. As she said, it's pretty informal. When it says a brainstorming session, that's really what it is. And like she said, my name is Kirsten. I am a youth services librarian for La Crosse County Libraries in Wisconsin. And I want to start by apologizing for my voice. I've had a lot of class visits today, and I'm recovering from a cold. I have a 2-year-old at home, and that cooler weather is getting us all. So I'll do my best to not start coughing in the middle of this. But we are going to focus on STEAM programming geared towards ages 0 to 5. I have a unique background in that I got a master's in chemistry before I got a master's in library science, and I really love that early literacy age range and have worked really hard at my library to incorporate STEAM into our programming. And so I wanted to share why it's important, a few ideas for programs, and then have us all work together. Oh, it's gonna go too far. Okay, so I'm gonna start with an introduction of STEAM, go into some STEAM storytime ideas, passive programs, active or other programs, and then we can get into our sharing and brainstorming section. My goal for today is that we all leave with some excitement and some new ideas for implementation for some new programming. So, what is STEAM and why should we care? STEAM is a somewhat newer term. I know it used to be STEM. They've added in that A for art, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And that art makes it so it doesn't seem as rigid. Art is really important for the creativity aspect, which a lot of like engineering and technology comes from very creative things. So all of them combined form STEAM. Infants and toddlers, especially, are naturally scientists. If you've spent any amount of time with them, you know what that means. They naturally conduct research to find out how the world works. So, if you've ever seen a toddler just throw something over and over, they just drop things. They're learning what happens. They're learning that it falls to the ground. They're learning that their adult picks it up after a few times. Maybe their adult might get a little frustrated. Those are all little experiments that they're conducting. They just don't realize that that's what they're doing. And then as they grow, exploring STEAM is part of that development of skills like cognitive development, approaches to learning, how do they learn best? Because each person has a different learning style. And these early STEAM experiences help develop their persistence because they have to try again until they get it right, which can be really frustrating for young kids. Communication, which is especially difficult with limited language skills, problem solving, and mental flexibility. And those are all super important, and they're things that we can do at libraries to support this in children. Starting with story times, I think a lot of libraries, if not all of them, have some type of story time program, and it's easier to create a STEAM story time than you might think if you haven't already. And you're probably already doing some things that are STEAM that you don't realize. So these are some of my favorite STEAM storytime books. There are so many. These are just the ones that the kids at my library have responded well to. This Ada Twist Scientist series by Andrea Beatty is one of my favorites. There's Rosie Revere Engineer, Iggy Peck Architect. That whole series is just amazing. And I think it's a Netflix show now, so that might resonate well with the children if they've watched the show. Antoinette Portis has lots of amazing books. A Seed Grows. I know some people have it in picture books, some in nonfiction, but it's a great book because it's super short. So even super young toddlers enjoy listening to this one. And I get a lot of young, very young toddlers, even at my family story times. So I have to find really short, sweet books. Let's Build a Little Train is a newer one that goes over all the parts of the train. And vehicles and things that go are extremely popular, even more so now than when I was little. So those are super fun, finding a book like that. Actual Size, and there's a new series by Sophie Henn that's very similar. They're all animal based. And when you open them up, the pages unfold and it shows the actual size of things. There's a new dinosaur one. There's one with deadly creatures with a shark mouth. You open it up and they always come up and want to stick their head on it and see if they could fit in a shark's mouth. And those are super fun, all the actual size ones. The Crayon's Book of Numbers, Feelings, Colors, all of that series. Vivi loves science. There's also Cece and Libby love science. Those are really fun. They're early readers, so they're pretty quick reads, but they teach really great information that pair really well with experiments at the end. So with the Sinker Float book, I actually pulled out just one of our tubs we used to transport storytime materials, and I filled it halfway with water, picked a bunch of stuff from our youth services office because let's be honest, we all have lots of random supplies laying around everywhere. I blurred out my office so that you cannot see how horrendous it is right now. And I just let them play sink or float. We talked about words like density, whether it would sink or float. We made predictions and hypotheses and tested the results, and it was super fun and really easy to throw together, free as well, which is always nice. And then this square series, there's squares, circles, shapes, and those are really fun I did them for my baby and toddler story times. I'm sure you all have suggestions, which if you do, throw them in the chat and we can all write them down because I'm always looking for new ones. Storytime flannels, these are just some of the ones that I've used before, and they don't appear to be STEAM when you're just looking at them, which is what makes them so fun because the children I don't market them as such. I'm not like, hey, today's a STEAM story time. I just kind of incorporate these naturally. We did a dinosaur story time. We sorted them by color. Then we sorted them by size. I mean, little ones. Then we sorted them by type of dinosaur. And that is one of the earliest STEM skills is sorting by shape, color, size. These were things that go. So very similar. We sorted them by color. Then we sorted them by vehicle. And we sang some songs with them. We also have a bus, any type of vehicle song, you know. The flowers on the bottom I did it with that Antoinette Portis books, The Things That Grow, and we talked about plant life cycles, and we sung a song about how the plants grow. And then this bee one, I made pink bees and yellow bees, which they always think it's super funny when something is a color that it's not supposed to be. Like bumblebees are yellow, but it's really funny when bumblebees are pink. But the purpose of this one, we sang a Five Little Bumblebees song, and then I introduced patterns with a patterns book. And we did, yellow, pink, yellow, what comes next? And then I created a few different patterns, yellow, yellow, pink, yellow, and they had a lot of fun trying to guess what comes next. There are also songs. I didn't make a slide for this because there are far too many songs to include all the lyrics on here, but any type of song that counts, counting up is great. Counting down too, if you have five little flowers, you pick one. Now there's four. And then, because counting down and subtracting is much trickier than counting up for littles. Any of those songs that count are super great for STEAM story times. Okay, passive programs now. My library has done a lot of passive programs, especially in the summer. We have what we call creation stations, and every week we have a new project out. Sometimes they're really simple, sometimes they're a little more involved, but they're all geared toward preschool through grade school, but even little kids can, or for those ages alone, and then that littles would be able to do them with an adult's help. And passive, I'm using that term to describe a program that doesn't require a time slot. There's no registration. There's no real, like, no staff needs to be there. It's very minimal. You have it set out. People can come and go and do that experiment or that program or craft or whatever you have it. as they want to. And for the purposes of this presentation, these are just STEAM activities that can be left out for any amount of time, and then people can do it whenever they're in the library. So because it is a passive program with minimal staff direction, you have to think about the mess and the cleanup because like I at my library am not in charge of the cleanup. Our circulation staff helps with keeping these stocked and looking nice. And so if they're super messy and there's water all over the ground, they tend to get upset with that. So I always keep that in the back of my head. Also, since we're switching it out every week, they have to be fairly inexpensive because our budget is limited at our library. And with that, I created these because I wanted to do a color sorting type of activity. We have some tables in the back and we have puzzles that were donated, but they are very old, like decades old, and I wanted to just come up with something new for them to do. So I created color sorting. I just used paper plates. I cut different shapes. I found pipe cleaners and sticks and streamers in the office, anything that was different colors. Mixed them all onto this main plate and then had them sort by color. And I could just tell every time I went back there, I mixed them back up and they were always sorted every time I went back there. So that was a super fun one. Really inexpensive. The materials did get broken a lot, so I ended up having to replenish the materials, but they were so inexpensive and I already had them in the office that it wasn't a huge deal. So anything you can find that's color sorting. If you have a laminator, even better, you can make it shapes or colors. That's a super fun one. And then this one on the bottom is one of my favorites. I made it 2 years ago. A lot of kids have used it and they have held up. I haven't had to replace any of the pieces. I bought ice cube trays at the dollar store. I bought wooden circles on Amazon for a few dollars. And then I just cut out a bunch of different colored circles from Microsoft Word or Publisher. And I laminated the ones that are inside the ice cube trays. And then I hot glued them to the ice cube trays. I hot glued them to the wooden circles, but I did not laminate them. I just hot glued the actual paper to the wooden circles. And then you just make a huge pile in the middle and let them go to town. And they sort all of them into the ice cube trays, and they love this activity. The next one is straw rockets. All you need for this one is 2 different sizes of straws, coloring materials like markers or crayons or colored pencils, whatever you've got, and this rocket template. You can cut them out, or if you want to leave them out and leave scissors out as well, it saves you a lot of trouble because they will cut them out for you. And then they can experiment with different lengths of straws because it changes the flying distance. So you put the smaller straw in the bigger straw and blow, and the rockets fly off, and they actually do pretty well. I was impressed. Younger children just kind of color them, and then for them, it's hard to blow hard enough to get the rocket to fly. But then the older kids were like cutting the straw and changing the length to see what would get it to go the furthest. And this could be a really fun story time craft as well if you do any sort of space exploration story time. Germinating seeds was probably our messiest, but it was so worth it because it was a lot of fun. We left out pinto beans and black beans dried, which are like $1 at the grocery store, paper towels, sandwich bags, and we did a spray bottle with water because we didn't want to have them like dipping into a bowl and then spilling the bowl over. So we just had a little spray bottle. There was information about the plant life cycle at the station because this is one where they just came up and did it whenever, so I wasn't there to do a story time or explain about it. So they wet the paper towel, stick some seeds in between, put it in the sandwich bag, and you can see from the picture that you can see through it. So when the seeds start to sprout, you can watch them grow. And then once they get to this point, you're supposed to plant them in the ground. And I did put instructions for that. I don't know how many of them actually did that portion, but it's really cool for them to learn about the plant cycle and then witness it happening. And it only takes a few days. So for those little impatient minds, it was the perfect little experiment. And I really love this one. Floating artwork is a great one. You have to buy a few magnet ones, which are like 99 cents on Amazon. At least they were last summer. They make their own artwork with construction paper or tissue paper or printer paper, whatever you've got. They cut it out, they glue it together over a paper clip or tape it, and then you tie the paper clip to a string. So then it floats. You can tape the bottom of the string to the table like they did in this photo, And this is where I got the idea. Or if you're like the kids at my library, one kid would hold it and the other one would try to catch it with a wand. And it's really fun watching your artwork float. They were pretty impressed. Some of them created a challenge because I had just a basket of paper clips out to see how many paper clips would attract to the magnet when they just stuck the magnet into the bowl of paper clips. So that's fun too. They were learning about magnetism. I had information, very simple information about magnetism printed out with this project, and this one was a hit. Paper cup phones are classic. I made these as a kid all the time, and I was very surprised at the amount of kids who had never heard of this. They taught kids about sound waves. I had information about sound waves and how sound travels printed out. And yeah, they just marveled at how they could hear each other through the cups and the string. And the older kids were trying different lengths of string to see if it would make a difference. Like I had kids seeing how far across the library they could get and still hear each other. And then they were just amazed. And Dixie cups, or they don't have to be brand name, there's cheaper ones out there, and yarn is what we use because we had a huge yarn donation. So, I mean, this is a pretty simple one that's really educational and really fun. And it's really fun to watch them do it too. Light refraction drawing was probably the cheapest one. I went and got a clear water bottle at Walmart, a plastic one, because I didn't want to leave an open cup of water, especially not glass, out on a table. But then you just use printer paper and whatever coloring materials you have. They draw any type of picture. And then when you put the picture behind the water and look through the water, your picture is flipped. So I had information about light refraction, and they were just so impressed that they could draw their name. And then when they put it behind the water, their name was backwards. And it was really fun. I think the little kids, the information didn't really get to them, but they did realize that, hey, my picture looks different behind this water. And the older kids were trying to understand why. And again, this one requires probably materials you already have on hand besides the clear water bottle. Now onto other programs. I could go on and on about all of the passive STEM programs, but now onto other programs, which these ones require staff to be present, one or more staff, depending on how large of a crowd you draw in. They may have a registration limit if a budget is of concern, or if you need a certain amount of material per child, you need to know how many kids are coming. And there are generally time slots that are limited because a staff member needs to be there. Maybe it's a drop-in program, or you're going to have a 1 hour program where you're leading them through things, reading a book, teaching them lessons, and things like that. I started a program a few summers ago called Tiny Steam. It's geared towards ages 0 to 3, but any ages are welcome. I do usually have older siblings come, and they have just as much fun as the littles. I always do a drop-in program for 2 hours, and that's because I found that nap times differ greatly between this age group, and I didn't want anyone to feel excluded because it was during their nap time. So you can just come anytime. Some people come and stay for a really long time, and some people come in the last 15 minutes. You just never know. But I have lots of different stations, and at each station, I have a little informal sign about each. Like this one is a color sorting station, which you saw earlier. I included it in this program because it was so simple. I had block building stations. I had this one was sink or float, a little bucket full of water, and they got to test all these different things to see if they were sinking or floating. They ended up like pulling things from their mom's purse to see if they would sink or float. And so this was a really fun, easy program to put together. And there was more, but these were my favorite simple stations. A few times a year, we have a Lego build program. We've had lots of Legos donated, and over the years, we've purchased additional ones because these draw quite the crowd. We sometimes use Legos. Sometimes we include other things like magnetiles because we get lots of littles. We've included Keva planks recently. I think that's how you say it. Those are really fun. This is actually a creation that a Storytime family did. I included these after an engineering story time, like how to build a school, how to build a house, or whatever we did. And then they got to build whatever their minds came up with. And then we have recently got these little building stones that we purchased for our last one in May. And they were super fun watching the kids try to stack as many rocks as they could. And they were perfect for little fingers as well. Again, Tiny Steam. This was the most recent one that I've done. It was only a couple of months ago. It was again a drop-in program for 2 hours. I had lots of different stations. So it was run in the same way. However, our library system that I'm a part of has kits that we can rent. And that helped me a lot this year because I got some materials that I would not have been able to afford otherwise. These large blue building blocks are very expensive, but I was able to rent them. And it's actually, there's little plastic balls, like from a ball pit, that are included. A lot of these pieces can fit a ball, and they ended up making racetracks for the balls, like it was a racetrack. And some kids brought see, he has his own car, and he was using it to build his own racetrack, and it was really engineering forward, which was great. I had these giant Legos, which are also not the cheapest, but I was able to rent those for this one as well. And they were really fun. I was going to use cardboard boxes if I wasn't able to get these kits. So that's another idea if your budget is limited. I purchased these sorting bears on Amazon and I wanted it to be a little messy. So I put them in a bucket of water and they ended up loving it, and several kids went home soaked. But it's okay because I warned them, and it was July, so they got to cool off as well. But they sorted the bears and they made houses for the bears using some of the blocks that we had, and it was really fun. And then this little last station, I bought the smallest swimming pool that I could find at the store because I didn't want anyone climbing in it. Several kids tried, no one succeeded. And I put foam blocks inside. I bought super cheap foam blocks off of Amazon and they float and you can build floating cities because when they are wet, they stick together. So their goal was to build the tallest tower without it falling over. And I think that they didn't get very high, but they had a lot of fun trying. The next month, I did a very messy tiny steam. This one was more art focused and technology. And my purpose for this one was I tried to explain to the parents that technology for littles is not always screen based. Technology is any sort of tool that you use. So I had a finger painting station. I had spray bottles that I put food dye and water in. So when they sprayed the paper, it was colored. I had chalk. I made chalk paint out of cornstarch and food dye. And I had lots of different painting materials. If they didn't want to finger paint, I had clothespins with feathers. I had Q-tips. I had paper towel rolls or toilet paper rolls, all different types of materials that you wouldn't think of to paint with, sponges, anything that I found lying around. And those are all different tools that we can use to paint. And that is technology. They're using a different tool to accomplish a task. And I had a lot of families say, that's a really creative. I always think of technology as they need to be learning how to use computers and laptops. And we are already doing this kind of stuff at home, which made me feel really good because I'm always trying to teach the families that they are doing a great job at home. It doesn't have to be super fancy things. And several kids went home covered from head to toe in paint, which made me very happy. Last few things here. Performers are amazing STEAM opportunities if you have the budget for it. We typically do a few large performers a year in the summer because that's when we get the largest attendance. So we save up a lot of our budget just to pay for performers. Last summer, we opened our summer program with Mad Science, and I'm in the Midwest and they are Midwest based, but any kind of performer that includes STEAM would be a really fun way. We had a bubble show, which I went up to the front. He put bubbles in my hand and then he lit them on fire. And the kids were just blown away that I had fire in my hand for a split second. And Mad Science did a bunch of science experiments with tools that we don't really have in the library. And we get hundreds of people at these. Like our general storytime attendance is 5, 10, and we had 250 people at our science show. So the community wants it. They love it. They're expensive, but they are so worth it. And there's tons of performers all over the country. I'm sure you could find some. There's also community collaborations, which generally cost less, and sometimes they're even free if they really want to work with you. My library collaborated last year with the local nature place. They brought a lot of hands-on STEAM activities for kids of all different ages. they brought a big dinosaur puzzle and different little experiments that they could do. So you can see the dinosaur puzzle right in the middle, coloring sheets, and you can see the large crowd that this drew that day. It was a lot of fun and very, very inexpensive. We work with nonprofits, which is another collaboration. We have Happy Dancing Turtle in our area, which is a nonprofit that works with animals and bugs, and they come and do a few programs a year. Next week, they're coming to do a bear program to teach us all about bears and bear safety and how to love your bears and keep yourself safe. And you can work with universities. Sometimes university scientists or university clubs will come out and bring activities for the kids to do. So it's always worthwhile to message them and ask. And I'm sure there are many more ideas that we could do. Okay, and before we get to the brainstorming, I wanted to mention one more thing. I couldn't make a slide because it's in the initial stages of getting ready, so I don't have any pictures or anything. But my library, I applied for a grant that's in the Midwest, but I'm sure they have grants elsewhere in the country for similar things. And the grant was made to establish STEM kits that can rotate in the libraries. And it's $2,000, and I was able to make 19 different STEM kits that are going to circulate so people can check them out. We have a coding one, there's outdoor exploring, water science, a microscope, like different things that they might not have at home that they can now check out and use and then bring back for the next person to use. And then I'm including one nonfiction book and one picture book in each and calling them story and STEM kits. And so I'm really excited about those. And if you want more information about that, you can send me an email, especially if you're in the Midwest. I can send the materials that I used to win that grant. But that's always something else you can do if you don't have the staffing for programming, or you can create a circulating collection of STEM things. And so now with that, I wanted to start with passive programs. So if you want to share in the chat or if you want to speak out, what passive programs have you done? Or are there any passive programs you want to do and need ideas for? Because we are all wonderful professionals that have lots of different ideas to share. And so I want everybody to leave here with a new idea. And if you have something exciting or something you're working on, let us know.
We are getting lots of things in the chat, so I'm going to start sharing them to the group. But we have a few questions, just if you could share your email too, Kirsten.
Oh, sure. It'll be on the last. Let me go there now. Well, I'm glad my computer froze after. Okay, there we go. There is my email. And I have a website where I keep up with my story time and other activities I'm doing in the library.
And so this is coming from Caitlin Patterson. They had STEM backpacks at their old libraries in Austin. So they shared that link.
Super cool. I'm gonna open it so that I can look at it later. I hope that
Yes.
doesn't mess with the PowerPoint. Let's see. Okay.
And I'll do a plug for the Colorado libraries. We have early literacy kits that you can check out at your library for 2 months and take home. And there are coding kits and water measurements. I'll share that. And all of the resources are available in there. So if you're not in Colorado, you can grab the resources for yourself too. And feel free to unmute if you want to share an idea. But we do have a question from Callie. We've tried similar passive programs that were set up in the children's area. One of our issues was, though, we ran into the mess. Do you have any other tips for encouraging children and their grown-ups to help keep the space a little more tidy?
Yes, I do, because the first year we did that, our circulation staff got very, I won't say angry, but upset with us because of the mess. And because we wanted to have it in the children's section, we ended up moving it the first year right in front of the circulation staff who's at the front desk, because then someone is always there and they always have eyes on it, and that helped with the mess a lot, because then if they were making a mess, they could be like, oh, could you please clean that up before you go? Or thank you so much for doing that craft. Would you mind throwing the trash away? Or whatever. And then the second year, I put it right next to my desk. And so I was like, hey, do you want to come do this craft? And then I was right there to help with the mess. So I don't know if that will help you because I don't know what your library situation is like. Um, the other one is if you go on Pinterest, there are a plethora of ideas, and I think ahead to the potential mess. So, like paper and markers with that water bottle, very little mess. Uh, Germinating seeds with a spray bottle, a lot of mess. So, trying to think in terms of that too.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the more access people have to materials to help clean up, sometimes the more likely they are to help. Tiffany's also shared that they give stickers to those who clean up. So that's always a good idea.
For passive programs, does anybody have any ones that they've set up that were a lot of fun that they want to share? Like I did. I think my favorite has been the string phones just because of how few of the children knew about those. But are there any ideas you guys have that you want to share that you've done that were successful or ones that were unsuccessful and say, please never do this because it was a huge mess? Okay.
And feel free to
Oh,
unmute. I'll try to share out what people share in the
okay.
chat, but it comes directly to us. Yeah, go ahead, Kelly.
Did you see my message
Yes.
in
And
the chat?
I shared it to the you first, but then to the group. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. I just wanted to check.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah.
just
But yeah, we usually for us, passive programs tend to be more artsy. Um, Mostly because for us, I think I'm kind of worried about people taking stuff because we're not exactly the nicest library around. So yeah. So anything more than like crayons and cutouts might be
Yeah.
a bit much. Yeah. But the kids do like what I did give them. I tried to branch out to something else to have the kids write something on one of the cutouts, but they didn't take it. So, but they at least they like coloring and putting stuff on the wall, so that's good.
which
But
is
yeah.
super. Do you pre-cut them or do you let them
Well,
cut them?
our system usually has well one of the things our system offers is a bunch of die cuts, so you can place an order in advance and say I want this much of like, and they have a catalog with a bunch of different pictures in it to choose from. So I usually just do that mostly just to save money. Although sometimes if they have something that I want but they don't have, I would find like a suitable picture on the internet, copy it, and then print it and cut it, and then
Okay.
give it to the kids. Yeah,
Fun.
but yeah, that's what I do.
Okay. If no one else has passive program ideas or keep them coming, we can also talk about those other types of programs that are more active. So, are there any other STEAM programs you've wanted to do and need ideas for? Or do you have a drop-in STEAM club? Or do you have tutoring or Lego club? Anything like that? I've wanted to do a Lego club, but we only do 2 a year. And I know it gets to be a lot sometimes.
Laura said her coworker did a story time that explained bubbles, what they are, how you make them, and they made ones where they could bounce. Sounds very fun.
That does sound very fun. My kids have been begging for bubbles, so I might have to steal that one.
I'd like to add something. This is Lucinda from Fraser, Colorado, teeny tiny town. What we do, or what I did when I was teaching in Durango, Colorado, was we had a STEAM program with archaeology, like digging for dinosaurs. So what I did was I just like you at a site, you mark off a plot with popsicle sticks and a string, and then you hide little dinosaurs, and then you have the tools like spoon, butter knife, a brush to kind of dig for the dinosaurs, and then there's a small, medium, large, and then when they dig it out, then they can display it and talk about the different colors or sizes, or even winged winged dinosaurs, carnivores, herbivores, and so forth. And the kids had a lot of fun with that. But the only thing is you have to reset it up after the kids are done. You have to hide the dinosaurs. So that was fun. Thanks.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that idea. We have a question that sometimes it's not as easy to clarify if a passive question qualifies as STEAM. How do we define a STEAM program versus a craft activity?
And that is a lovely question. And I have looked into this myself as well. And it seems like what people are doing are calling them STEAM if they learn something. So that is the line that your library gets to choose. And it depends on my circumstance. So if I do a story time about animals and then we color an animal at the end, I don't usually call that STEAM. But if you're doing a leaf rubbing with crayons and learning about leaves, then that is a STEAM program. But especially with the ages of 0 to 5, because they consider so much of this that early cognitive development and learning, you can pretty much consider anything STEAM if you want to. That's where that art comes in. So what I do personally, and I think it's just going to be up to everybody how they want to define it, but what I do personally is if it incorporates one of the other elements of STEAM as well. So I have that art craft. If it incorporates science, or if it uses a new tool that they've never used before, like a new writing tool, or if they're using art to build something, like I did paper bag houses where they got to build their own houses. If it involves one of the other letters of STEAM, if that makes sense, that's what I consider STEAM. Today I had them do handprint chickens at story time, and I did not consider that STEAM. But if I were to do coloring with some other type of tool, I don't know, like a leaf nature walk, I said that one, or using leaves to stamp. I've seen that one for fall. And that's the difficult part of including art, I've found, is that anyone can call things STEAM. Yeah, see, that's Caitlin says counting in baby story time is STEAM. Yeah, counting to 5, saying, what color is this pen? It's blue. That's STEAM because that's something new to them. They're figuring out the whole world. And that's kind of why I love this age, just because everything is kind of STEAM. Having blocks out to build with, that's a fun one. Okay, Rebecca says sink or float ramps are also a lot of fun. Done programs experimenting with different ramps at different heights and how different objects go down them. I have a question on that one of what did you use for the ramps? Because I have tried to do that, and if you try to buy ramps, they can get pretty pricey. Maybe I could save up enough cardboard to do it, but what did you guys do for the ramp activities?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is Rebecca. I'm at Douglas County Libraries. We used, so we had a whole bunch of old signs that were on sandwich boards that we'd use for various occasions. So we cut those up into strips and then used pool noodles so that you put the signs in between the pool noodles so that you don't damage anything you're putting it against. And then sometimes I would just leave it blank, like using the back side, or cover it with fabric or cover it with yarns. There were different textures on the ramps. And the pool noodle size is a really good size for a ramp that you can kind of move around.
That is genius and also really inexpensive, and I love it. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I had a question. Kate
Yeah.
said I could chime in. So we did a egg hatching. I'm wondering if anyone else has done a duck egg hatching, and it seemed really weird, like it was a pre-packaged ducks and they come with money. We're doing more expensive things, and I think it was it just seemed really weird. It didn't seem like from a farm. Um, has anyone else experienced that, or do you have any insight to that?
Melanie, in Colorado, I've only used extensions and had them CSU extension and had them bring the eggs from a farm. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add, but that seemed much more normal and natural.
Yeah, everybody loved it, but I just was like, ugh.
Laura has I don't know how to say this, K-Nex building set. I've never heard of those actually. I'm gonna look them up.
I think it's called Connects.
Next, that makes more sense. That sounds super fun. And Sarah had the funds to get super space giant magnetic fort tiles. I've had lots of people ask for fort building supplies at our library, and that sounds amazing. I'm jealous of that. Okay. Okay, let's see. Caitlin says for a story time about kites, a small desk fan and balloon float above the fan to talk about wind and air. I bet the kids just marveled at that one. That sounds really fun. Carol, take big building toys to different parks in the county once each fall and spring for our Play, Explore, Build program. Do lots of people in the communities come to those? Carol, do they travel to the parks or are they nearby to the library or how does that work? We've done a few attempts at let's all meet at a park and do a program, and we don't tend to get people. Gail says egg hatching with a local science educator and farmer. Yeah, super fun. It's a great community connection. Karen, caterpillars into butterflies. There's a kit you can get on Amazon. That sounds like a lot of fun. We're partnering with a local geologist and done science programs and sometimes incorporate art into those programs. Partnering with local scientists sounds amazing. Our geology department gave us a bunch of rocks to use one time for a matching game, and that was pretty fun. They didn't have the staff that summer to come out themselves, but yeah, always reach out to them and see maybe they have their own ideas, even if you don't know what they could do for you. They usually have some sort of outreach ideas.
We have a question, Kirsten, about ideas for babies and toddlers. So something a little lower level, maybe.
Yes, for my babies and toddlers, I have put out I bought foam blocks. So sometimes they don't even stack them, sometimes they chew them. And that is fine as well because that's how they get that sensory development. So any type of soft, I went to Once Upon a Child and bought those. Here it's our like children thrift store. I don't know if they have them everywhere, but they're used but in good condition. That saved me lots of money for those. What else have I done for babies? All of those things that I had in my slides, I did do with babies and toddlers. They just treat them differently than an older child might. So the color sorting, they mostly eat instead of actually sort the colors. But I didn't include them. I own these boxes from Lakeshore, which Lakeshore gets pretty pricey, but if we have leftover money at the end of the year, my supervisor allows me to buy toys for babies and toddlers, and I always try to get STEAM ones. They are colored boxes. The lid comes off. They're sturdy, but they have a foam outer, so if they chew them, it doesn't hurt. You open it, and there's 4 different things inside, like an animal, a crayon, a ball, and there's 4 different colors. So we kind of just dump all the things, and then the babies sort them when they're really young. They end up eating them, but then they end up sorting them after they get a little bit older. Uh, I like a lot of sensory things for the little, and eventually it turns into steam. So Lakeshore also has these tubes. They're literally just a tube full of different things like jingle bells or feathers or shapes or balls, bouncy balls. And when you turn them, the things go from side to side. We practice saying, is this heavy or light? The feathers are light, the balls are kind of heavy. The jingle bells are really loud, the feathers are very quiet. And I've seen the kids grow up with them, and after about a year, they've started using the words, and those are really fun. I like a lot of sensory. Yeah, Lakeshore Learning has a lot of stuff. It can get expensive, but they have sales sometimes, which is when I usually try to hit them. So yeah, for babies and toddlers, it's kind of putting a bunch of different things in front of them and letting them explore lots of sensory things, things that make sound, things that move, the cars that roll, motion. Trying to think if there's anything else I like. Painting. It's really messy, but if the parents are okay with it, it's super great for them sensory wise to touch the paint, but then also to mix colors, that color mixing, um, just to explore with all those colors. Blue and red make purple, yellow and blue make green, and then learning how to feel all the different, you can use different tools too. They might not realize what they're doing at the time, but they will eventually. I'm seeing, yeah, Caitlin said I'm a little behind on the chat. A color story time talked about secondary colors and did color mixing bottles. Yeah. Color mixing is a great one. Storytime themes, Three Little Pigs, building houses out of paper straws, pencil sticks, and Duplo bricks. Mm. Babies love mirrors, yeah. Providing them items they can put on the mirrors and see the reflection. Yeah, there's also like this mirror sheets, and you can just get a piece of cardboard and put the mirror sheets on it. That way, it's not a breakable mirror, and those are pretty fun. You can put blocks on them and stack them on top of that reflective surface. So that's super fun too. Local entomologists visit with live insects and framed ones. Kids loved it. Yeah, we've worked with a local like reptile group. They're a nonprofit, so they're pretty cheap, and they brought owls this summer. The past summer, they brought giant snakes. I put a giant python on my shoulders, and the kids freaked out. I was freaking out inside, but I didn't freak out until after. Clothespins and popsicle sticks are great for building. I always have popsicle sticks on hand. The mini ones, the giant ones. Oh, use pudding as paint for the littles. I had pig templates, and they rubbed chocolate pudding on the pigs. Beading is really good for toddlers and babies. I like to use pipe cleaners and Cheerios, or if you buy giant beads, those work as well. But since beads are a huge choking hazard, I kind of just like to go with Cheerios. And we did it as a bird feeder, but I think the kids ended up eating all the Cheerios off of the pipe cleaner. They made themselves a Cheerio bracelet, which is fine. Beading is really good for little kids' fine motor skills. All right, we got so many fun ideas.
And they keep coming in. I'll keep putting them in the chat, but we do only have about 1 minute left here. So thanks for all the amazing ideas from Kirsten and also from the audience here. This next session will end in a minute here, and then the break will be until 2:50. So you do have about 25 minutes. So make sure to get up, stretch, run around, and we'll see you back in our third session of the day. And thanks again, Kirsten. I appreciate all of your ideas.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Feel free to email me if you have any ideas to share. or if you want any resources from anything I shared, I'd be happy to chat. I love talking about this stuff.
You're getting lots and lots of thank yous and great ideas and lots of love in the chat.
Thank you for coming. That was so fun.